We are You Are Echo Based Network, and what we are doing today, guys, this is actually really good news. Jon Favreau was just interviewed over at the Writers Guild of America West. You can find it at the WGA.org website. And Nick and I are going to go through this incredible interview with Jon Favreau as he speaks on The Mandalorian and Star Wars and basically gives a great insight to his mind, and some would even say brilliance. At this time, I'm going to bring in my partner here at Echo Base Network, none other than Nicholas Glenn. Nick, what's going on, brother?
Just another day, another CC's Pizza Dollar.
Yeah, another CC Pizza Dollar. Yeah. All right. Well, look, guys, you can find the article that Jon Favreau did. This article in its entirety is here. We're not going to go through the entire thing. What we've done for you guys is we are basically going to pick apart the parts that have the most meaning to us. And it's going to start right here with the question. They say over at the Writers Guild of America West, they say, you've talked a lot about working in space, in the space where technology and storytelling overlap. The Mandalorian is obviously right in that sweet spot. From a writing perspective, how do you avoid losing sight of the story when you have all of this technology to play with? And Jon Favreau's going to respond. And he says, are you concerned? Actually, this is the wrong thing. Here we go. He says, writing for cinema has always been a dance between technology and story. You've always been limited and get presented opportunities by whatever the technology available in the day is. And you're influenced by what others have done before you and what you can innovate for those stories because you've always been competing as a writer. Writers are only limited by imaginations of their readers. And he continues, but when you're presenting it for the screen, you have to work your way through the interface of the screen. I'm very fortunate to be following in the footsteps of George Lucas, who found a really magical balance between those two elements and was able to evoke something that felt very archetypal, and in spite of the fact that it was cutting-edge technology. Part of it is clinging very closely to the hero's journey and the monomyth. That becomes a guiding light, and borrowing that from George becomes a North Star for us. And Nick, looking at his answer to that question, I thought the thing that was most noteworthy there is he's saying that he's fortunate to be following in the footsteps of George Lucas, and he says that he's clinging to the hero's journey. Let's get a Nick's take on that.
So, yeah, that's two things that it seems like Lucasfilm has, in the Kathleen Kennedy camp, has not been doing with Solo, with the sequels, that sort of thing. So it's nice to hear Jon Favreau say that. And the other thing about when he was talking about technology and story, you should have the story well written out, and the technology should just be a tool that you use to help you tell that story. And it seems like for the most part, he's really focusing on a lot of the stuff that the inspirations he gets from George Lucas and that hero's journey type storyline, and not really focusing so much on the technology that, I think we saw a lot of that in the prequels. George was really focused on a lot of the technology. So yeah, I'm happy to hear his responses here. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, and I'm to piggyback on what you're saying. The Mandalorian has been great story so far, and it's way more than eye candy. And I like the fact that Jon Favreau, he could have gone either direction with that question. He could have talked about the writing or the eye candy, and he stuck with the writing part, and he didn't get off track. And I think that has a whole lot to do with him as a producer of The Mandalorian. He sticks with the story. So let's continue with their questions. The next question that we wanted to pick up on, they say, you basically wrote the first few episodes of The Mandalorian totally spec and then took them to Disney, right? And then you see his answer. He says, yeah, I had a pitch for a concept of following the archetypes that influenced George Lucas, whether it was the Western, the samurai film, the World War II film, earlier space operas, cliffhangers, Flash Gordon. Looking at the films and the archetypes that influenced George was a way for us to make a smaller story that would work for the scale of the small screen and get back to the basics. Also, I know enough as a writer. I don't have the facility. It's very difficult for me to write on demand. I find it the most daunting of all the disciplines that I have. Writing is the one that is potentially the most rewarding, but also the most challenging, because if it doesn't come to you, there are no shortcuts. You have to either write or not write. And so if I have the inspiration to write, I often don't wait for permission. I just start to go because I know that I'm not always going to be able to do it. And Nick, as I'm reading that, one thing that really stuck out to me was him saying that he's looking at the things that inspired Lucas from the beginning. And then the whole not waiting for permission. He's not trying to fit into anybody else's narrative. It's all within his own mind. What say you?
I don't know. I got a little bit of well, for one, I'm glad that he's taking that inspiration from Lucas, but I hope he's not doing a copy and paste type thing, which so far I don't think he is. The story of the Mandalorian, the overall main storyline, I think is pretty well done. But a lot of these scripts and a lot of the writing in the show definitely need some attention and need some tightening up. There's definitely some criticisms there, but all in all, it's pretty good. The fact that he's not waiting on permission from anybody to write any of this stuff, I mean, is obviously good, because if a thought comes to mind or he's got an idea, it seems like he's just jumping right into it and starting to write away, so that he doesn't kind of lose that idea or that focus. I would like to see. I'm glad that he's sticking to stuff that's inspired George Lucas, but I would be all for him kind of putting his own take on it, and maybe borrowing from some other really good stuff like Tolkien, or C.S. Lewis, or some other really good writers like that, and some of the story arcs that come with some of those other real popular, real well-written stories.
Sure. That's an interesting point. And I'm with you. He continues. The next question was a follow-up question to the last one, and they said, having said that, when you dove in alone and started these spec scripts for Mandalorian, how pumped were you? Did you know something good was happening immediately? And then his answer to this was, yeah, I was having a great time. First of all, I feel very gratified when I'm actually able to write something, because that tap isn't always available. It's exciting because I still have a lot of reverence for it. When it's going well, it feels like something I'm very grateful for. The other thing was, I was paired up with somebody who I had collaborated with in the past, Dave Filoni. I've found if you have a very good collaborator, even though I was actually writing the episodes, there were many, many hours of conversations, and I would show him things I was writing, and he was giving me a tremendous amount of feedback and helping guide me through the world of Star Wars. He had studied under George for, I think, a decade, working on the animated shows, so I felt like I had a direct connection to the source code of this whole world with him. And Nick, I think he's basically piggybacking on his last answer. He's paying homage to Lucas in saying these things. I think it's interesting that he brings up Filoni here as, on a whole nother point. Filoni is the one who conceptualized the whole veil of the Force, and he's going his own direction. He doesn't have to check with anybody. He's writing what he wants to write. So one could gather that this whole retconning thing could actually be going down and happening. I know I just threw a complete curveball. He didn't say that, but his answer to this question is kind of short, and he's basically yeah, me and Dave Filoni are doing this whole thing, and I'm the writer, but I definitely use his mind, and he's been very close to Lucas for the past, for the last 10 years of Lucasfilm. So I'm using him, and we're getting this thing done. What say you?
Yeah. So again, I got my criticisms with Filoni, and I know a lot of other people out there do as well, especially a lot with the continuity issues between a lot of the Clone Wars and Rebels episodes and the Mandalorian. But and also Filoni is basically, he's in his, I would say he's still in like his freshman year of live action stuff. He's very knowledgeable with the Star Wars universe and that sort of stuff, and that's why a lot of the criticisms out there are kind of, they almost, I mean, they make sense, and they're stuff that shouldn't even be criticisms because he should know a lot of this stuff already. But anyways, as they go on this journey together, I think it's going to get better than what it is now. I've liked Mandalorian season 1 and 2. I think they're good, but I think there's room for improvement there, big time. And I think as they kind of go on this journey together, I see it getting better as they progress and go along.
Sure.
Or that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of getting better, I think that we would say that it definitely got better at the second half of season 2.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so that's kind of where we'll go next with the questioning. The WGA.org website asked them, did you have this arc planned out from the very beginning? Specifically, was the appearance of Luke Skywalker revealing that the story was essentially a few years after Return of the Jedi, always a set idea from the jump, or something that you arrived on after working with the material? And then Dave Filoni gives a very short answer to this question. Here's exactly what he says. He says,
"You mean
no."
Jon Favreau?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. Jon Favreau says, no, the story unfolded as I wrote it. The Mandalorian inherits a great deal from existing Star Wars stories, and when I write, that context is always a consideration. It became clear that within the established continuity, certain things were likely to transpire. And Nick, that's the first we've really heard him speak on the whole Luke Skywalker thing. We haven't even really heard Mark Hamill talk about the return of Luke Skywalker yet. Jon Favreau was interviewed. I can't remember where the interview was, but he basically kept his comments to, yes, we kept it a secret. It's been a secret for the past year, and we haven't let anybody know, and I can't believe nobody found out about it. Well, here he's basically telling us this was not a plan from the beginning. It just fits within the story. And this is something that wasn't forced. This is something that happened or occurred naturally within the Star Wars story. And I think that is a breath of fresh air for me. What about you?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, as a writer, as you're starting to write these stories, and they kind of develop organically as you're going along. And George Lucas, the same thing happened. His original story for the original trilogy is not what we ended up getting on film. There was changes along the way, and that's very well documented. Luke and Leia were not always brother and sister. Vader was not always Luke's father. So that's good that he's not sticking to one thing and kind of putting himself in a box. He's kind of got his ideas. He's putting them on paper, and as him and Filoni are going along, it's organically changing from within the confines of the Star Wars universe, and I think that's good writing on their part. So yeah, that's good stuff, And like I said just a minute ago, I think as they go along and are working more and more together on this, it's going to get better.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And two more quick questions from the interviewer to Jon Favreau. They say, are you concerned, having placed the story right in the midst of the saga, within the latest films having revealed Skywalker's future, that you're at all pinned in narratively? Or basically, are you trapped? And then his answer to that is, we have a tremendous amount of freedom afforded to us because of the gap in time between the films. Dave Filoni and I are in constant discussion regarding how each story choice is impacted by and would impact existing Star Wars material. And Nick, that is a very good answer to the question. It's, I only know how to respond to that. I just think that is, him talking about a tremendous amount of freedom, and that he and Dave Filoni are getting this thing done. And I don't know if there's anything that you want to say about that, but I think it's just a really good answer.
Yeah, well, I think in some cases they're taking a little bit too much freedom because there's obvious continuity issues in there, which I've already mentioned earlier in here. And as far as the fact that they're trying to stick within the existing Star Wars material, I mean, that's always a good thing. But I really hope that, and none of this is confirmed, but I really hope that they really take this off into to where they change the future. Like Luke, they find out about the sequel trilogy. They find out about that storyline, all that stuff, and they take steps to avoid that future.
Yeah.
So because I know a lot of people out there don't want to get into any type of time travel or multiple timelines. I think if they did it that way, you could avoid the time travel or the multiple timelines and stuff, and still have that continuity to where Luke's future is unknown. So I don't know if any of this stuff is going on in their minds right now, but hopefully it is.
Well, spoiler alert, we're about to get to the very end of the article and the last question, but Jon Favreau never says anything about, we're headed right towards the sequel trilogy. We already know how all of this ends. He doesn't say anything, and he never has. He has never publicly said, we all know where the story ends. Like, it all goes to the sequel trilogy. That's not being said. And Dave Filoni hasn't said that. So one could hypothesize that there's a possibility. You got to say there's at least a 50-50 chance that they're going to derail this thing and it's not going to lead towards the sequel trilogy. And I think that the majority of fans are behind that. You let us know. But let's move on to this last question. He says, how have you handled the internet water cooler with The Mandalorian? And he says, you have to be selective about it with television. You're part of a cultural conversation that's very immediate. Here's the really good part of the answer. So there's some of it that I'm exposed to and I really enjoy. And there's some of it that we make sure that we filter it in a way that doesn't become daunting. And he continues, I'm used to it from Marvel because when we were starting a project, we'd cut together a trailer pretty early on in the process and then show it at Comic-Con. There's something really cool about putting a small sample of what you're doing out there to your core audience and seeing if they are sparked to it. Because at the end of the day, it's a conversation with that audience. And those are fans who you were speaking to. And if you're doing something that they're not feeling, you're not doing your job right. Ooh.
100%.
Speak on that.
And that's almost sort of like a jab at I think Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, Rian Johnson, not directly, obviously, but all those movies were very divisive. And he's sitting right there saying, everybody was saying what was everybody saying after The Last Jedi? You got to bring Luke back. Like, let that be like where it was like a clone or something, or he just teleported or something. You got to bring him back. And they didn't. They brought Palpatine back, which made no freaking sense. So they're not listening, and the fact that he said that tells you right there that he is listening to the audience. He's listening to those ultra passionate fans of this universe, because their response and their take on what he's giving them is important to him. he wants people to enjoy it. He wants people to like it. He wants people to be on board. And I can tell you right now, if Filoni and Favreau are listening to this right now, I can tell you right now, we don't want this to go in the direction of the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
We don't want Snoke. We don't want Palpatine. We don't want the First Order.
Kylo,
I'm perfectly happy with the remnants of the Empire trying to rebuild the Empire or something, and something like that. But we don't want this going in the direction of the sequel trilogy.
Well,
so
yeah,
and I think most all ultra passionate fans out there would agree with that.
Well, and here's what Jon Favreau just said to me: I'm making Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And if the majority of the fans are unhappy with what you made, that's not Star Wars.
Yeah.
In such a way, he just said that. And he basically said, I'm doing my job because the fans like what I'm making. And by the way, The Mandalorian is not fan service. There are fan service elements to it, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
R5D4 being in a corner somewhere just to be there, that's fan service. But when it feels like Star Wars when we watch it, that's not fan service. That's Star Wars. And that's what it should feel like.
Yeah. And it made total sense that Luke was in that end scene.
Absolutely.
He's, as far as we know, really the most powerful, if not the only Jedi. I mean, Yoda said, once I'm gone, the last of the Jedi will you be. So Ahsoka's not a Jedi.
That's right.
Yoda obviously knew that she was still alive, I'm sure. And then you got stuff that's not actual canon. So the fact that Luke showed up there, it made sense.
Yep.
I don't see that being fan service.
No, that's not fan service. That's great writing, and it's great Star Wars, and we are totally behind that. Nick, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the shirt they could buy on EchoBaseNetwork.com?
Yes, so we had one of our subs and Sheila Cole, and then another one starts with the E. I can't remember. I have it in the in our community tab though. If you go there, you'll see it. But she gave a great idea of instead of the Kathleen Kennedy shirt of
the Force is
female, it instead says the Force is with Filoni.
The Force is Favreau.
Yeah, the Force is Favreau. And then the other one that we changed it to was the Force is
Favroni.
Yeah. I don't have
it up
here in front of me, and we just came up with this like an hour before we were starting recording this. So, but yeah, you can see them on the community section of our YouTube channel, and they're pretty cool shirts. So,
So support Echo Base Network and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, and we would appreciate it. Guys, that's going to do it for us. Let us know in the comments what you think about this awesome interview that is a big tale. Jon Favreau, the fans are behind Jon Favreau. The High Republic first show came out today. We're not doing an episode on that because
I watched it. It was boring and uneventful.
Yeah, we don't care. We watched it and we thought, is there any news here? Is there anything to report? No. We're going to go with the Star Wars that's actually, good Star Wars for us. We're going to give you Jon Favreau in this awesome interview. There is hope, ladies and gentlemen. Cling to it. As always, I'm the coach. He is Nicholas Glenn. We are, and you certainly are, Echo Base Network. We are out.
We'll see you guys on the next video.